Welcome, brave listeners, to Wilhelm Presents Frightening Tales. I'm your host, Wilhelm. Tune in each week where I entertain my listeners with another dark and creepy tale of the paranormal, donated by authors from around the world. If you're an author of some paranormal fiction and would like it to be shared with our listeners, submit one at frighteningtales.com. And while you're there, tune in for more than 40 hours of previous content. We've been busy. Today's episode is written by Mike Mann, a Southern Illinois transplant that currently works masonry during the day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But by night, he listens and reads horror when he's not writing it. Mike's influences stem from the minds of Lovecraft and Poe, Lumley, and other masters of the macabre. If you want to find out more about Mike Mann, look for him on Reddit. A link will be provided in the show notes. Normally, each week I accept that there is a blanket listener discretion is advised statement provided on the website, trusting that each of you is capable of managing your limits. But Mike has a gift for the visceral, and his tales tend to linger after you're done. For this very reason, I will reiterate, listener discretion is advised. This week's tale is titled Mycosis. The season of summer has returned in full force. Humidity radiates within every crevice of her home, to the point of feeling like a sauna. Upon waking, the woman is drenched in sweat and leaves a large pool in the shape of her once slumbering form. She fumbles to the kitchen to quench her highly dehydrated thirst, filling a crystal cup with ice and water. Yet within mere moments, the ice has melted. This heat devours any form of cold or comfort, and she can no longer take it. The time has come to remove her air conditioning unit from the shed. As much as she loves her home, it has the downfall of not having centralized air, which leaves her with the annual task of carrying the heavy unit all the way up the stairs and struggling to fit it inside the living room window. After a sweaty endeavor leading to frustration with a hint of exhaustion, she has finally completed the task. Within an hour of tapping the power button, the room slowly begins to drop in temperature. As the days get hotter, the unit works even harder to fight off the enemy of extreme heat. Her living room remains the most comfortable of her home. This is where she spends the majority of her time, just to alleviate the dreaded summertime. As she lounges on her couch, reading to pass the time, she turns her head to feel the current of cool air flow towards her. Her eyes fixate on small black spots on the vents. Her brow furrows in curiosity and wonder at the sight. She walks towards the unit to investigate the odd specks. It appears to be some sort of mold, forming from the moisture caused by the overworking of the unit. A few sprays of bleach and a vigorous wipe of a rag eliminates the problem. Even more days pass, bringing mass amounts of heat that bring forth more moisture into the vents. The spots have returned, but in mass numbers and increased size. There is even black liquid settling at the seal of the window. It slowly drips down the wall to soak into the carpet. So many times this woman has sprayed and cleaned, with every result being more mold forming. She runs her fingers across the seal to examine the liquid on her fingertip. It smells of soil and rot, bringing on a case of nausea. She has opted to leave a towel on the carpet to catch the dripping black ichor that has been changed daily. Her frustration rises to fits of rage and tears of confusion of why this is happening. The following morning, after her weekend routine, she discovers fungi growing through the vents and even surfacing from the water-soaked towel. With a scream, she races to grab the towel and toss it in the trash. The fungal spores scatter through the air in a cloud around the woman. Anger-induced scrubbing of a sponge brings the blackened infestation to its end. Within the vents, with no gloves to protect her hands, they are now caked in a mush of watery obsidian filth. She hastens to rid herself of the mess by tossing the sponge to the bottom of her trash can. Afterwards, her hands and arms are aggressively cleansed with scalding hot water mixed with liquid soap. The microscopic spores invade her nostrils, bringing the woman to a hazy slumber as she places herself on the couch. She is abruptly woken to the searing pain throbbing within her hands. It's not the bones or muscles hurting from the constant cleaning, but from within her skin, as if something has invaded the very layers that make up the flesh on her hands. The sensation felt as if red-hot metallic wires wriggled inside of her dermis. It was unbearable for this woman and caused a panic to invade her very core. Jumping up in an instant, she runs to her freezer to shove her burning hands into the cold, and hopes this can be her saving grace. For a few moments, it seems to help her condition, but as she loses feeling in her fingertips, she can no longer handle it. Removing her hands from the freezer, she slowly regains feeling, and the burning begins to return. Looking down, she notices large bumps clustered at the tips of every finger on both hands. Her stomach retches in utter disgust to the point of nearly vomiting. She bursts into her bathroom to grab the bottle of isopropyl alcohol and begins to pour every drop into the plugged sink. This has to be the solution she is looking for. An infection of some sort has invaded her hands, so the alcohol should be what she needs to kill it. The soaking of her hands seems to do nothing for the burning, but she is convinced that it must. She unplugs the sink to allow the alcohol to drain. The fumes burn her eyes to the point of tears. The bumps are still present on her fingertips, and the burning has not stopped, but its intensity has died down. Slow steps towards the living room feel like an all-out cross-country marathon to her as she plops herself down on the couch. Her eyes move towards the unit to gaze at the black, pulsing mass of mushrooms. All at once, the light of consciousness falls in defeat to the darkness of sleep. A pounding headache is the catalyst to the unwelcomed awakening for the exhausted woman. Sharp, piercing jabs of pain lash out to her eyes while she rubs the sleep from them. She blinks rapidly to remove the fog, and her eyes drift to her hands absently. A gray mucus drips from jagged, bulging pores on the tops of her hands. Without any preservation, a putrid stream of vomit bursts out of the poor woman's mouth onto her chest. Tears roll from her eyes, and a sting latches onto her cheeks from the acrid liquid. She jolts up towards the bathroom, but not before her eyes once again lock onto the window unit. Enormous fungi of the darkest palette writhe back and forth from the pulsating carpet to the warped walls of her home. She screams in terror and starts into a run to the bathroom door. She pulls the shower curtain to reveal the knobs above the tub faucet and turns on the hot water. Ripping off every bit of clothing, she looks towards the mirror and shrieks in horror. The reflection looking back at her is one of pure terror and awful things that warp the mind into the realms of insanity. The hair on her head is matted and infused with thick, green, pulsing veins of something not natural to the human body. Bulbous black mushroom caps have begun to emerge from the surface of her skin in multiple areas. Long roots of orange have busted through her scalp and wrapped around the green veins. More jagged pores have spewed out a foul-smelling gray sludge, leaving a pool beneath her feet. The sharp pain in her head intensifies as she gazes at the mirror more closely. Grotesque, inky mold has invaded her tear ducts and traveled to the very iris of each eye, with a shifting mass of yellow fibers tickling her eyelashes. Another scream echoes from her mouth, and within is a sight of more green veins that have pierced into her tongue, accompanied by orange roots that intertwine in and around small black stalks that connect to bulbous caps. Ash-colored splotches have surrounded her gums, and the enamel of her teeth has withered to slender points of yellow. The terror spirals out of control in her mind. The panic grasps her heart and squeezes without mercy. Her infected eyes roll to the back of her head. The pain permeates in her skull, and she collapses. As her body falls to the floor, her skull slams into the edge of the porcelain tub. The fungus has made the bone in her cranium paper thin, and it bursts with no restraint. What should be brains are nothing but fungal embryonic sacs filled with dark fluid. They fly through the air to slam and burst on the walls to release gel and mucus that spit more spores. No blood is present within the woman's limp body, only the gray mucus which rolls out of her skull and every other opening to seep into the wooden planks of the floor. The mushrooms in her skin shift more violently until they remove themselves from her flesh, leaving gaping sores that ooze disgusting fluids. Long tendrils grow from the stems to encompass every inch of the bathroom, and her body disintegrates into something resembling soil. The growth of this infestation continues with no boundaries to engulf all of her once quaint and cozy home. She is but fertilizer for them now, solely for the purpose to increase the growth and feed this living, rotten mass of filth. This is their home now, and soon the entirety of the home will be covered with the growth. The roots dig deep, burying beyond the foundation and traveling in the dirt, a highway of connected lines that join all of the ever-growing fungi. The size of the house will soon be too small, and over time the mass will travel in order to compensate for the expansion. The neighboring houses will be next, invaded through any crevice open, for the inky forms to invade and breed. Thank you, brave listeners, for joining me on another dark story. I urge my listeners to go out and find more content by our weekly author, if you're not too timid. If you enjoyed today's story and you've tuned in on YouTube, please click the like button. And if you don't want to miss future stories, click the subscribe button. If you were present today on Spotify and enjoyed the story, you're more than welcome to leave a comment. Wherever you listen, please do me a favor and share today's story, if you can. And then tune in next week for another frightening tale, if you're brave enough.